Some breaches can't be explained by Vought's PR team, no matter how many focus groups they poll or crisis managers they hire. The tear in reality that opened above Times Square at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday wasn't a soup gone rogue, wasn't a terrorist attack with a catchy acronym, wasn't something that could be blamed on external forces while Vought's stock price stabilized. It was something older. Something that had been killing gods long before Compound 5 turned fragile egos into flying monsters. The rift burned green, not the clean corporate green of Vought International's logo, but the sick, radioactive green of something fundamentally wrong with the universe. It hung in the air like a wound, crackling with energy that made every phone camera in a 3-block radius fry instantly. The tourists and theater-goers who'd been taking selfies with the A-Train advertisement looked up, and for a brief moment, they felt something their carefully curated social media feeds had never prepared them for: primal, ancestral terror. Then he fell through. The armored figure hit the pavement hard enough to crack concrete in a perfect circle, creating a crater that would later require 17 different municipal permits to repair. He landed in a 3-point stance, one massive fist pressed against the shattered ground, and for 3 heartbeats, nothing moved. The crowd had gone silent, even in New York, even in a world where people could fly and shoot lasers from their eyes. This was different. The armor was wrong. Ancient but impossibly advanced, marked with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Covered in carbon scoring and ichor stains that no dry cleaner in Manhattan could ever hope to remove. The Doom Slayer rose to his full height, and the crowd took a collective step back. His helmet swept across the intersection, that iconic visor glowing with cold fury. Somewhere in his armor systems, Vega, or what remained of the AI after being integrated into his suit, was already analyzing this new dimension. Atmospheric composition. Earth standard. Technological level, 21st century. Threat assessment, pending. But the Slayer didn't need threat assessments. He could feel it. That familiar corruption signature bleeding through the dimensional walls like rot through wood. It was different from Hell's sulfuric taint. This was chemical, corporate, packaged, and sold with a smile. But corruption was corruption. And corruption had to be purged. The first person to approach him was a mistake wearing a Vought security uniform. The guard had been stationed at the Vought-sponsored tourism center across the street, and his training told him to control the situation, establish a perimeter, wait for backup. His hand went to his radio. "This is Unit 12. We have an unidentified enhanced individual in Times Square requesting..." The Slayer's hand moved faster than the guard's eyes could track. Fingers closed around the radio, crushed it into sparking fragments, then released. The message was clear. No calls for help. No backup. No mercy. "Sir, I need you to..." The guard started, reaching for his sidearm. The super shotgun appeared in the Slayer's hands like magic, pulled from the dimensional holster built into his armor. The guard's eyes went wide. This wasn't a Supes pulling lightning from nowhere or flying through the air. This was cold, mechanical lethality. The kind that didn't monologue or pose for cameras. The guard stumbled backward, hands raised. Okay, no problem. I'm just doing my job, man." The Slayer's helmet tilted slightly, studying him. Then, with deliberate slowness, he lowered the shotgun. Not because of mercy. Mercy was for things worth saving. But because this one wasn't corrupted. Not yet. Just another wage slave grinding away in a system built on exploitation and lies. The Slayer turned away, and the guard collapsed against a parked car, hyperventilating. But Vega's sensors were already pinging. Elevated readings, 3 blocks north. The corruption signature was stronger there, multiple sources, moving through the city like tumors with legs and capes. The Slayer's gauntlet flickered to life, holographic hood painting the world in threat assessment overlays. In hell, demons glowed red. Here, something else lit up his targeting systems. Compound V signatures. Dozens of them. And one particularly bright reading heading directly toward him at approximately 500 miles per hour. A sonic boom rattled windows as Homelander descended from the sky, cape billowing dramatically in winds that his publicist would later describe as heroically positioned. America's greatest hero touched down 30 feet from the Slayer, boots clicking against asphalt with rehearsed precision. That million-dollar smile was already in place, the one that sold action figures and breakfast cereals. "Hey there, friend." Homelander's voice carried that practiced warmth that only years of media training could produce. "I'm Homelander. Looks like you've had a rough landing. Why don't we get you some help? Figure out where you came from." His eyes flicked to the crater, the damaged street, the terrified crowd. Damage assessments were already running. This would cost Vought millions in cleanup and PR. "I'm sure this is all just a big misunderstanding." The Slayer stared at him. Vega's analysis scrolled across his HUD. Subject exhibits compound V signature. Strength class, extreme. Durability, extreme. Heat vision, confirmed. Threat level, severe. Recommendation, eliminate. Homelander's smile twitched slightly. Usually, people reacted to him. Fear, awe, worship. He fed on it all. But this armored figure just stood there, radiating nothing but cold intent. Okay, strong, silent type, I get it. Very intimidating. The smile sharpened. Showing too many teeth. But here's the thing, you just damaged Vought property, scared a lot of people, and frankly, buddy, you're ruining what was a perfectly nice evening. So how about you take off that cute little helmet and we have a conversation like adults? The Slayer's response was to chamber around. The metallic ch-ch of the super shotgun echoed across Times Square like a death sentence. Every screen around them was playing Vought advertisements. Homelander's face 30 feet high, promising safety and security. The irony wasn't lost on the Slayer. In hell, demons pretended to be demons. Here, they pretended to be heroes. Homelander's eyes flickered red. "Last chance. Stand down, or I'll make you stand down." The Slayer raised his shotgun, and Homelander realized with sudden, shocking clarity that this thing in armor wasn't afraid of him. Not even a little. "Wrong answer," Homelander growled, and his eyes erupted with heat vision. The Slayer's armor absorbed the blast, argent energy shielding flaring bright green against the concentrated solar radiation. He didn't flinch, didn't stumble. He just walked forward through the beam, boots crunching on melted asphalt, shotgun steady. Homelander cut off the heat vision, genuine surprise replacing his rehearsed confidence. "What the f—" The shotgun roared, and Times Square learned what real violence looked like. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character. And the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. The hunt has only just begun. The buckshot should have bounced off Homelander's skin like everything else. Bullets, missiles, angry ex-girlfriends with kitchen knives. That's what Vought's internal testing promised. What made him unkillable. What justified the billion-dollar valuation. Should have. Instead, the argent energy-infused shells punched into his shoulder with enough force to spin him sideways, tearing through the fabric of his suit and actually drawing blood. Not much, a few drops that looked black under the neon lights, but enough. Enough to make Homelander touch his shoulder with trembling fingers, stare at his own blood like it was a language he'd forgotten how to read, and feel something he hadn't experienced since he was 6 years old, in that white room with the bad doctors. Fear. You fucking shot me, Homelander whispered. And then the whisper turned into a roar, that shattered windows for 2 blocks. "You shot me!" He launched himself at the Slayer with every ounce of super-speed Compound V had gifted him, hands outstretched to tear this armored insect apart. The Slayer sidestepped with practiced efficiency. He dodged Hell Knights moving twice as fast and brought the shotgun stock around in a brutal arc that caught Homelander across the jaw. The impact sent America's greatest hero tumbling through a Starbucks window in an explosion of glass and overpriced coffee. The Slayer didn't pursue. He was already moving, Hood tracking multiple Compound 5 signatures converging on his position. More of them. The city was infested. Vega's tactical analysis suggested immediate extraction and reconnaissance. But the Slayer had stopped listening to tactical analysis around the time he'd punched his commanding officer for suggesting they abandon Mars. He loaded 2 more shells, the mechanical precision of the reload a familiar comfort, and headed north. Behind him, Homelander pulled himself from the wreckage, coffee dripping from his hair, eye twitching. The barista who'd been working the closing shift was filming on a miraculously intact phone, and Homelander's media training screamed at him to smile, wave, say something reassuring. Instead, he heat-visioned the phone into slag, ignored the barista's screams, and took off after the armored figure with murder in his heart. The Slayer was 3 blocks away when Vega pinged another concentration of Compound V signatures. This cluster wasn't moving toward him. They were stationary, gathered in what the local network identified as Pier 47, Vought Oceanic Conservation Gala. His HUD painted the building's thermal signature. Approximately 200 civilians, 15 elevated body temperatures consistent with Compound V enhancement, and 1 particularly strong reading near the center stage. Conservation Gala. The Slayer had seen demons dress up their feeding grounds with prettier names too. He kicked through the pier's service entrance, the reinforced door flying off its hinges. Inside, the gala was everything Vought events always were. Champagne fountains, ice sculptures of the 7, corporate sponsors glad-handing B-list celebrities who'd sold their dignity for a photo op. At the center of it all, on a stage decorated with projection-mapped ocean waves, stood the Deep. "And that's why Vought International is committed to protecting our oceans," the Deep was saying, his voice carrying that rehearsed passion that Ashley had drilled into him during 6 hours of media training. He'd been sober for 4 days specifically for this event, and the smile on his face almost looked genuine. "Every dollar raised tonight goes directly to..." The emergency exit exploded inward, and the Slayer walked through the smoke like a vision from humanity's worst nightmares. The crowd turned, champagne glasses frozen halfway to lips. Someone dropped a plate. The shatter was the only sound. The Deep's smile crumbled. "Oh fuck. Oh Jesus fuck." He'd been briefed on the Times Square incident 30 seconds ago through his earpiece, but seeing this thing in person was different. The armor was covered in stains that his aquatic empathy told him were blood. So much blood, from so many different species. "Security! Security!" Vought security rushed forward. 12 highly trained professionals with top-of-the-line equipment and exactly 0 chance against what was coming. The Slayer's plasma rifle materialized, blue energy coils humming to life, and he opened fire. The precision was surgical, not a single civilian hit. Every shot found a security guard, punching through Kevlar like it was tissue paper, and suddenly the marble floor was slick with red. The screaming started. The stampede followed. 200 wealthy donors who'd paid $10,000 a plate to feel good about themselves trampled each other, rushing for the exits. The Slayer let them go, his targeting system locked on the real threats. 4 Supes in the crowd, their Compound V signatures burning bright on his HUD. 2 were running with the civilians, not threats, just cowards. But 2 more were moving toward him, and the Deep was backing toward the stage's rear exit. "I don't know what your problem is, man," the Deep shouted, hands raised. "But I'm a hero! I saved dolphins! I'm on your side!" The Slayer's helmet tilted, and the Deep saw his own reflection in that visor, saw himself the way this thing saw him. Not a hero, not even human anymore. Just another monster that needed killing. Wait! The Deep dove off the stage into the decorative koi pond, his Atlantean physiology kicking in. His plan was simple. Swim through the pond's filtration system, reach the ocean, disappear into the depths until this nightmare ended. He made it 6 feet before the Slayer's hand plunged into the water, grabbed him by the neck, and hauled him out like a fish on a hook. The Deep thrashed, his enhanced strength useless against the Slayer's grip. "Please, I have a wife! I'm in therapy! I'm trying to be better!" His gills flapped desperately, drowning in air. "I'll do anything! Just let me—" The Slayer's other hand produced the chainsaw, and the Deep's protests turned into screaming. What happened next couldn't be shown on any news network, wouldn't be released by Vought's damage control team, and would haunt the nightmares of everyone who witnessed it. The glory kill was efficient, brutal, and sent a message that echoed across every Vought security channel in the city. Nothing with compound phi in its veins was safe anymore. When it was done, the Slayer dropped what remained and turned toward the 2 Supes who'd been stupid enough to attack him. One had super strength. He managed to crack the Slayer's helmet slightly before the super shotgun turned his head into red mist. The other could teleport. She blinked around the room desperately until the Slayer predicted her pattern and caught her mid-jump with his crucible blade, the Argent energy weapon burning through her enhanced biology like it was nothing. The whole fight lasted 90 seconds. The Deep's gala had become a slaughterhouse, and Vought's cameras had caught every frame. Ashley was probably having a stroke in the crisis management room. Homelander was seconds away, and the Slayer was already moving toward the next signature, the next target, the next corrupted soul wearing the mask of a hero. His ammo counter read 87%. His health was at 100%. His rage was infinite. The hunt had truly begun. The emergency meeting in Vought Tower's executive conference room had the energy of a plane crash in slow motion. Ashley Barrett stood at the head of the table, her hair fraying from its usual corporate perfection, tablet in hand, displaying footage that broke every PR protocol she'd ever memorized. On screen, the armored figure walked through the peer's carnage with the casual efficiency of someone checking items off a grocery list. "So we're clear," Ashley said, voice climbing toward hysteria. "This thing has killed the Deep, 3 B-list Supes, and 17 security personnel in under 20 minutes. It shot Homelander, actually drew blood, and every tactical team we've sent has been turned into fucking wallpaper. Does anyone have any good news?" Stan Edgar sat at the far end of the table, fingers steepled, watching the footage with the detached interest of a man reviewing quarterly earnings. "How much of this is public?" "All of it," Adam Bork from Digital Marketing moaned. "Times Square has 1,000 cameras. The Pier had another 500. Twitter is calling him Doom Guy, and the hashtag is trending worldwide. Reddit already has a fan club." "Of course they do," Ashley muttered. "Nothing says internet culture like glorifying a mass murderer." "Mass murderer of Supes," Edgar corrected quietly. "He's had multiple opportunities to kill civilians and hasn't taken them. Every casualty has been enhanced or employed by Vought. That's not random violence. That's a hit list." The room went silent. On screen, the Slayer ripped through another security checkpoint, and the camera feed cut to static. "Get me Black Noir, A-Train, Queen Maeve, and Starlight," Edgar said. "Homelander is already engaged. The 7 will end this tonight, and tomorrow we spin it as a terrorist attack that our heroes valiantly stopped. Ashley, prepare the narrative. Bork, scrub what you can from social media and someone find out what the hell that armor is made of. Sir, a tech analyst spoke up nervously. We've run the footage through every database, military, corporate, international. That armor doesn't match anything on Earth. The energy signature is, it's reading as dimensional, like it's not from here. Edgar's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. Interdimensional? We think so. The portal in Times Square showed quantum instability consistent with breach theory. This might be an incursion from... From where? Ashley demanded. From fucking Narnia? From the upside down? We need actionable intelligence, not Comic-Con panel discussions. From somewhere that makes our Supes look like children, Edgar said softly. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Double Homelander support team. I want eyes on this target at all times. And get me the Secretary of Defense. If this escalates beyond New York, we'll need military assets. Military? Ashley looked horrified. Sir, if we bring in the government, they'll ask questions about compound Vi distribution, they'll ask nothing. Edgar cut her off. Because we'll position this as Vought, protecting America from an existential threat. This is an opportunity, Ashley. By tomorrow morning, the world will be reminded why they need the Seven. Why they need us. He headed toward the door, then paused. Oh, and evacuate floors 40 through 60. If our armored friend is targeting Supes, he'll come here eventually. I'd rather not be present when he arrives. The meeting dissolved into chaos as executives scrambled for assignments. On the screens, security feeds tracked the Slayer's path through Manhattan's streets. He was heading northeast, toward Midtown, and his route was starting to form a pattern. He was hunting. 6 blocks from Vought Tower, the Slayer stood in an alley running thermal scans. Vega had been analyzing the compound V signatures, cross-referencing patterns, identifying concentrations. The results painted a clear picture. Vought Tower was the hive, the source, the beating heart of the corruption. But between him and that tower were dozens more signatures. More infected. More targets. His HUD pinged. Incoming, multiple hostiles, air and ground approach. They arrived like a propaganda poster come to life, the Seven's remaining members deploying in coordinated formation. A train blurred into position at street level, having snorted enough compound Vi to make his heart thunder like a jackhammer. Queen Maeve dropped from above, sword drawn, landing with enough force to crack pavement. Black Noir emerged from the shadows, knives ready, silent as death. And Starlight descended on columns of light, hands already glowing with electrical energy. "Stand down," Starlight called out, her voice carrying that earnest quality that her fans loved. She still believed in talking first, fighting second. Still believed some people could be reasoned with. "We don't want to hurt you, but you've killed people. Good people. That ends now." The Slayer's targeting system lit up each of them. Compound V signatures, all of them, corrupted. A-Train moved first. He always did. Cocaine confidence convincing him he was faster than physics. He blurred toward the Slayer at supersonic speed, intending to grab him and run him into a wall hard enough to liquefy organs. The Slayer's ice bomb deployed at precisely the right microsecond, flash freezing the air. A-Train hit the frozen zone at Mach 2 and went from unstoppable force to tumbling disaster, crashing through a parked car in a tangle of limbs. Black Noir came next, silent and professional, knives seeking the gaps in the Slayer's armor with surgical precision. He was good, better than most demons the Slayer had fought. But demons didn't have centuries of combat data burned into their muscle memory by divine enhancement. The Slayer caught Noir's wrist mid-strike, twisted, and the knife embedded itself in Noir's own thigh. Before Noir could react, the Slayer's headbutt shattered his mask and sent him sprawling. Queen Maeve charged with her sword raised, all Amazonian fury and repressed alcoholism channeled into one devastating strike. The blade hit the Slayer's armor and actually bit. This was genuine Amazonian steel, blessed or enhanced, or whatever mythology Vought had cooked up. It cut a groove across his chest plate before he caught the blade with his bare hand, yanked it from her grip, and snapped it over his knee like kindling. "Oh, fuck," Maeve breathed, because she'd just recognized something in his visor's glow. This wasn't a Supe having a bad day. This was something that killed Supes the way normal people killed insects. Starlight hit him with everything she had. Electricity arcing from her hands in blindingly bright streams that should have fried his nervous system. The Argent energy shields absorbed most of it, but she was strong, stronger than the others, her power drawn from actual electricity rather than just compound Vought. For 3 seconds, the Slayer was driven back, boots scraping against asphalt. Then he adapted, angled his armor to redirect the current into the ground, and walked through her lightning like it was rain. His equipment launcher deployed, firing a remote detonation charge that stuck to the building beside her. The explosion wasn't meant to kill, just to disorient, to break her concentration. It worked. The electricity cut off, and the Slayer's hand wrapped around her throat, lifting her off the ground. Their eyes met, his hidden behind ancient armor. Hers wide with the realization that maybe she'd chosen the wrong side of this fight. Behind him, Homelander finally caught up, heat vision already charging. "Put her down!" The Slayer's helmet turned toward Homelander, then back to Starlight. His grip loosened. She dropped, gasping, scrambling away. Not a threat. Not really. Just someone born with power in a world that weaponized everything. But Homelander. The Slayer's HUD painted him in arterial red. Priority target. Alpha Predator. The thing wearing a hero's face while children disappeared into Vought laboratories. The Slayer's BFG 9000 materialized, the massive weapon humming with enough Argent energy to vaporize a city block, and Homelander's confidence finally, truly cracked. "Oh," Homelander said quietly. "Oh shit." The BFG 9000 doesn't just fire energy, it tears holes in physics and forces reality to apologize. The weapon's charging sequence made the air taste like copper and ozone, and every Sapo still conscious felt their compound, V-enhanced cells screaming danger in a language older than human evolution. Homelander's X-ray vision couldn't penetrate the weapon's core, but he didn't need to. He could see the future. Green fire, oblivion, and his perfect face erased from existence. He moved, not toward the Slayer, even Homelander's ego had limits, but up and away, breaking the sound barrier in his desperation to put distance between himself and that glowing green maw. The sonic boom shattered windows for 3 blocks, car alarms screaming in harmony with the fleeing crowds. The Slayer tracked him through the scope, finger on the trigger. The math already done. Trajectory confirmed. Collateral damage: 17 buildings, estimated civilian casualties in the hundreds. Vega's voice crackled through his helmet speakers, clinical and calm. Warning: firing solution exceeds acceptable civilian casualty parameters. Recommend alternate approach. The Slayer's finger didn't move. In hell, there were no civilians, just demons, corpses, and people who hadn't become corpses yet. But this wasn't hell. These weren't demons, no matter what his corrupted energy sensors said. These were people, trapped in a system that turned children into weapons and sold their exploitation as entertainment. The weapon powered down with a descending whine that sounded almost disappointed. Homelander stopped his retreat 1,000 feet up, cape snapping in the wind, and stared down at the armored figure with newfound hatred mixed with genuine confusion. That thing could have fired. Should have fired. The hesitation meant something, but Homelander's narcissism couldn't process what. All he knew was that he'd almost died, and the cameras had caught him running. "Maeve!" He screamed down, voice cracking. "Noir, get up and fucking end him!" But Maeve was clutching her ribs where the Slayer had cracked 3 of them with a casual backhand, and Black Noir was leaking blood through his torn suit, reassessing every life choice that had led to this moment. A-Train was still tangled in the wreckage of a Honda Civic, and Starlight was helping civilians evacuate, her hands shaking. The Slayer holstered the BFG and pulled out his super shotgun instead. More precise, less city-destroying. He started walking toward Vought Tower again, stepping over Noir without bothering to finish him. The message was clear. "You're not worth the ammunition." "I'm not done with you," Homelander shrieked, heat vision lancing down. The beams carved smoking lines across the street, forcing the Slayer to dodge. Not because the heat would kill him. His armor had survived the depths of hell, but because standing still meant wasting time. And every second he wasn't moving was another second the corruption spread. A motorcycle roared around the corner, and Billy Butcher arrived like an answer to a prayer no one had prayed. He skidded to a stop 50 feet from the carnage, took in the scene. The 7 scattered and bleeding, Homelander throwing a tantrum in the sky, and one armored figure walking through the chaos like he owned it and smiled his most dangerous smile. "Well, fuck me sideways," Butcher breathed. "Huey, you seeing this?" In his earpiece, Huey's voice crackled. "Billy, that thing just fought the 7 and 1. Maybe we should nothing. Get the van and meet me at Canal Street." Butcher killed the engine and stepped off the bike, hands raised in a gesture that was more showmanship than surrender. "Oi, tall, green, and murderous. Got a minute?" The Slayer's helmet turned toward him. Vega ran a quick analysis. Subject: William Butcher. Criminal record: extensive. Known Vought antagonist. Compound V signature: negative. Threat level: minimal. Butcher took 3 steps closer, reading the body language, or trying to. The armor gave nothing away, but the stillness suggested curiosity rather than immediate murder. Progress. Name's Butcher. I'm what you might call a professional soup killer, though I'll admit my methods ain't quite as efficient as yours. He gestured at the devastation. See, you and me, we got common interests. You want Supes dead. I want Supes dead. Difference is, I know where they sleep. Above them, Homelander's heat vision carved another warning shot into the asphalt between Butcher and the Slayer. "Get away from him, limey fuck. That's an order." Butcher didn't even look up. "Shut it, you star-spangled cunt. Adults are talking." He turned back to the Slayer, lowering his voice. "Here's the pitch. I got intel on every soup facility in North America. Vought Tower, sure, but also the labs, the orphanages, the places they make more of these arseholes. You want a hunt? I'll give you a hunting ground that'll make tonight look like a fucking warm-up." The Slayer remained motionless. Butcher couldn't see his eyes, couldn't read his expression, but he could feel the weight of that stare analyzing him, calculating whether he was useful or just another obstacle. "I ain't asking you to be my mate," Butcher continued. "I ain't asking you to join a team or hold hands or share your feelings. I'm offering you targets. Lots of them. All you gotta do is what you're already doing. Rip and tear until there's nothing left." Vega's analysis updated. Subject appears genuine in anti-soup agenda. Potential asset for identifying high-value targets. Recommend cautious cooperation. The Slayer pulled out his wrist-mounted display, fingers moving across holographic keys. A file request appeared on Butcher's phone with a ping that made him jump. He checked the screen, saw the demand for information on Compound V production facilities, and his grin widened. "Right. So we're data sharing now. Beautiful." He started typing rapidly. "Sage Grove Center. That's where they test the unstable batches. Godolkin University. Training ground for the next generation. Red River Institute. Off the books. Doesn't exist on paper. But I got photos. And the crown jewel, Vought Tower, floors 40 through 60, that's where they cook the V itself. The Slayer's HUD updated with coordinates, schematics that Butcher's group had spent years compiling. Sage Grove was 200 miles north. Godolphin was upstate. Red River was in Virginia. But Vought Tower was right here, 18 blocks south. And the corruption signature was so strong that Vega's sensors were redlining. "Yeah, tower's close," Butcher said, reading his body language. "But it's also a fortress. 30 Supes on staff, automated defenses, and Homelander's home territory. You go in there guns blazing, you'll kill a few, but they'll bog you down. Better to hit the supply chain first. No new Supes means no reinforcements." Above them, Homelander was screaming into his comms, demanding backup, demanding air support, demanding someone tell him how to kill something that wouldn't die. His voice had gone shrill, the sound of a god discovering mortality. The Slayer considered the tactical assessment. Butcher was right. Vought Tower was hardened, defended, and full of non-combatants who'd been born into this system rather than choosing it. But the facilities? Those were pure corruption, labs where they tortured children, where they refined the chemical that made monsters, where they perfected the machinery of exploitation. His gauntlet flashed coordinates. Sage Grove Center. Priority target updated. Butcher saw the display and laughed, a sound with too many sharp edges. "That's my boy. Huey's got the van coming. We'll drive, you follow, and by sunrise, Sage Grove won't exist anymore." He extended his hand, then thought better of it. "Right, you're not the handshake type." The Slayer's helmet dipped once. Not agreement, not alliance, just acknowledgement of temporary parallel interests. Then he turned and started walking north, toward where Huey's van would arrive, away from Homelander's impotent rage. "This isn't over," Homelander screamed. "I'll find you. I'll tear you apart. I'll fucking end you." The Slayer didn't look back. He'd heard 1,000 demons make similar promises. They'd all bled the same. The van smelled like stale coffee, gun oil, and Frenchie's cigarettes, a bouquet that Huey had long since stopped complaining about. He gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles as the Slayer's armored form kept pace beside them at 40 miles per hour, running with the tireless efficiency of something that had crossed the surface of Mars on foot. Every few seconds, Huey's eyes flicked to the side mirror, watching that green visor glow in the darkness. "This is insane," Huey muttered. "We're leading a murder machine to a mental health facility." "Mental health facility," Butcher repeated from the passenger seat, voice dripping with sarcasm. He was cleaning his rifle with methodical precision, each movement betraying years of military training that the British government would deny ever happened. "That what we're calling torture labs now? Sage Grove ain't a hospital, Huey. It's a fucking abattoir with better PR." In the back, MM was running diagnostics on a laptop, pulling up everything the boys had compiled on Sage Grove over the past 2 years. Butcher's right. Places where Vought sends the V-test subjects who don't take properly. 43 patients currently listed. Staff of 60, 12 with active combat training. Security's tight, but it's designed to keep people in, not out. "And our new friend?" Frenchie asked, peeking through the rear window at the Slayer. "He just runs? For 200 miles? Mon Dieu, what is he?" "Something that kills Supes," Butcher said simply. "That's all we need to know." Kimiko signed rapidly, and Frenchie translated. "She says his energy signature reminds her of something old. Something that was never meant to be human." He paused. "Also, she likes him. Says he has honest eyes." "He's wearing a helmet," Huey pointed out. Kimiko shrugged and signed again. She says you can tell. The Slayer's HUD was painting the landscape in tactical overlays, Vega providing constant updates. The facility was 60 miles ahead, nestled in the Catskills, where Vought could operate without media scrutiny. His sensors had already picked up the fence line, 20-foot chain link topped with razor wire, and enough voltage to stop a bear. The guard towers were manned by former military contractors, and thermal imaging showed heavy weapons emplacements. None of it would matter. They pulled off the highway onto a service road that wound through dense forest. Butcher signaled for Huey to kill the lights, and they proceeded in darkness, broken only by moonlight and the Slayer's glowing visor. 2 miles from the fence, they stopped. "Right," Butcher said, stepping out and spreading a satellite photo across the van's hood. "Guard rotation changes in 20 minutes. Main entrance is here. Reinforced gate, checkpoint, the works. But there's a drainage culvert on the east side, big enough for—" The Slayer walked past him, ignoring the photo entirely, and headed straight toward the fence line at a steady march. "Or we could just go in the front door like a fucking battering ram," Butcher finished, grabbing his rifle. "Oi, wait for— bollocks. Move out!" The boys scrambled after him, weapons ready, as the Slayer approached the fence. The motion sensors triggered immediately, alarms wailing into the night. Floodlights snapped on, painting the tree line in harsh white light. The guard tower's speaker crackled. "This is private property! Turn back immediately, or we will open fire!" The Slayer answered by pulling out his rocket launcher and obliterating the guard tower in a fireball that lit up the forest like daylight. The explosion was still echoing when he fired a second rocket at the fence, blowing a hole 20 feet wide. Then he was through, boots crunching on smoking metal, heading toward the main building while security forces poured out like angry wasps. "Subtle," MM muttered, checking his body armor. "Real subtle." Butcher laughed, a sound that belonged in a slaughterhouse. "Huey, Frenchie, circle around to the east wing. That's where they keep the subjects. MM, you're with me. We secure the research files before our armored friend turns this whole place into modern art." Kimiko was already gone, a shadow racing after the Slayer with feral anticipation. The security forces opened fire with everything they had. Assault rifles, shotguns, even a mounted .50 caliber that chewed through trees and sent bark flying. The Slayer walked through it like rain, his argent shielding absorbing rounds that would have shredded a normal human. He returned fire with the precision of someone who'd been killing since before gunpowder was invented, each shot from his heavy cannon finding a target. Men dropped, screaming, clutching wounds that body armor couldn't stop. 3 Supes emerged from the main building, test subjects who'd been deemed stable enough to serve as enforcers. The first could harden his skin to stone, which lasted exactly as long as it took the Slayer to unload the super shotgun into his face at point-blank range. The second had pyrokinesis and managed to superheat the air around them before the Slayer's ice bomb flash froze her mid-blast, leaving her as a statue that shattered when he walked through it. The third was fast. Not A-train fast, but quick enough to dodge the first shot. Not the second. Kimiko caught up to him at the main entrance, where a dozen security personnel had set up a defensive position. She looked at the Slayer, pointed at herself, then at the left flank. He nodded once. She grinned, and they moved. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. Kimiko tore through the left side with savage efficiency, her regeneration letting her take risks that would kill a normal fighter. The Slayer dismantled the right, each movement economical, brutal, and final. They met in the middle over a pile of bodies, and Kimiko signed something that didn't need translation. The Slayer reloaded and pushed through the doors into the facility proper. Inside, the screaming had already started. The hallways of Sage Grove were sterile white, fluorescent lit, and filled with the acrid smell of chemicals and fear. Orderlies in white coats fled at the sight of the Slayer, and he let them go. They were just workers, complicit but not corrupted. His targeting system highlighted the security forces, the handlers, the doctors, who'd turned human experimentation into a career. Those he killed. A doctor stumbled out of a lab, syringe in hand, and tried to plead. Wait, I was just following orders. I needed the job. I have student loans. The Slayer checked his gauntlet display. This man's ID badge accessed the high-security wing. The wing where they kept the failures. The children who'd been injected with Compound V and survived, but not in any way that Vought could mark it. He grabbed the doctor by the coat and dragged him toward the nearest door. No! No! You can't go in there! Those subjects are— The Slayer kicked the door open and threw the doctor inside. The room beyond was a nightmare that even hell would have rejected. 20 beds, 20 children, all of them twisted by Compound 5 into shapes that hurt to look at. One kid's skin had turned to glass, and every movement cracked him further. Another was phasing in and out of reality, screaming in multiple dimensions simultaneously. A girl in the corner had dissolved into a puddle that still had eyes. The doctor was crying now. We were trying to help them. We were looking for a cure. The Slayer's gauntlet recorded everything, every face, every horror, uploading it to Vega's database. Then he turned to the doctor and saw him for what he was. Not a healer, but a monster in a white coat. The chainsaw came out, and the doctor's protests turned into a different kind of screaming that stopped very suddenly. Behind him, Butcher and MM entered the wing, saw the children, and MM had to turn away, hand over his mouth. Jesus Christ! Jesus fucking Christ! Get him out, Butcher said quietly, all the humor gone from his voice. Everyone who can be moved, get him to the van. Frenchie will know what to do. The Slayer was already moving deeper, following the thermal signatures toward the facility's core. Vega's scans had identified the main laboratory, and that's where the strongest Compound Vi readings emanated from. That's where they refined the formula, tested the batches, and documented their atrocities with scientific precision. That's where the real monsters were. The main laboratory occupied the entire sublevel, a sprawling complex of glass-walled rooms where white-coated scientists conducted their experiments behind the veneer of medical research. The Slayer descended the stairwell in silence, each footfall deliberate, the screaming from above fading into a dull background noise. His helmet's sensors painted the layout in 3 dimensions, 47 life signs, 32 of them clustered in what appeared to be an observation theater. They were watching something. The door at the bottom was reinforced steel with biometric locks, retinal scan, fingerprint, and keycard. The Slayer ripped it off its hinges with his bare hands and stepped into a nightmare dressed up as science. The observation theater looked down into a testing chamber where a teenage boy was strapped to a medical table. IVs running into both arms. Above him, a display counted down from 60 seconds. Around the theater, scientists watched with clipboards and tablets, their faces showing the practiced indifference of people who'd stopped seeing test subjects as human years ago. Dr. Rachel Vogelbaum, daughter of Jonah Vogelbaum, carrying on the family tradition, stood at the center console, her voice clinical and detached. Subject 47 Delta, Compound V variant 7.3, attempting to induce pyrokinesis in non-enhanced adolescent. Previous subjects experienced complete cellular breakdown at the 40-second mark. Let's see if adjusting the dosage. The Slayer's heavy cannon shot exploded through the observation glass. The scientists scattered like roaches when the lights come on, but they had nowhere to run. The Slayer dropped into the theater in a shower of glass, boots crunching on the fragments, and Dr. Vogelbaum finally looked up from her tablet to see Death walking toward her in ancient armor. "Security!" she screamed, backing against the console. "We have a breach! Code Black! Code Black!" The Slayer's response was to shoot the two armed guards who rushed through the side entrance, then methodically gun down every scientist who'd been watching the boy burn. Not execution, extermination. These weren't people anymore. They were tumors wearing lab coats, and tumors got cut out. Dr. Vogelbaum scrambled for the emergency release on the testing chamber, her fingers shaking so badly she could barely hit the button. "Please, I'll let him go. I'll release all of them." "Just don't." The Slayer grabbed her by the throat and slammed her against the console hard enough to crack the screen. His visor was inches from her face, and she could see her own reflection in that glowing green glass, could see herself the way he saw her. Not a doctor, not a scientist, a demon in human skin. "I have a family," she gasped. "2 daughters. They don't know what I do here. They think I save people." The Slayer's grip tightened, and Vega's voice whispered through his helmet. "Dr. Rachel Vogelbaum, lead researcher, Compound V Stabilization Project. 2147 documented test subjects under her supervision. Mortality rate, 89%. Subject specialization, adolescent enhancement protocols." She'd killed children, hundreds of them, and she'd written papers about it. The Slayer's other hand moved to his belt, fingers closing around a plasma grenade. He could make this quick. Drop her, arm the grenade, move on. But something in the testing chamber caught his attention. The boy on the table was still alive, eyes wide, the countdown on the screen frozen at 19 seconds. He released Vogelbaum and moved to the chamber's door, ripping it open. The boy flinched, expecting pain, but the Slayer simply tore the IVs out and unbuckled the restraints with surprising gentleness. The kid stared at him, then bolted for the exit without a word. Behind him, Vogelbaum was reaching for something under the console. Not a weapon, a panic button, the kind that called in the big guns. The Slayer's hand shot out, grabbed her wrist, and broke it with a casual twist that made her scream. Then he dragged her to the testing chamber and strapped her into the chair her victims had occupied. She thrashed, begging, crying, offering everything from money to information to sexual favors. The Slayer ignored it all and started the countdown. "No, please, you can't. I'm not enhanced. The V will kill me." That was the point. He left her there, her screams following him as he moved deeper into the facility. The countdown would finish in 60 seconds. She'd have that long to understand what she'd done to 247 children. That long to feel their fear. The Slayer found Butcher and MM in the records room, downloading years of research onto encrypted drives. The walls were lined with filing cabinets containing physical backups, names, dates, injection logs, autopsy reports. Evidence of systematic torture disguised as medical advancement. "Got what we need," Butcher said, not looking up from the terminal. 20 years of Compound V testing. Names of every Vought executive who authorized funding, bank transactions, shell companies, the whole bloody supply chain. He finally glanced at the Slayer. "This goes public, it'll bring down the company. Might even bring down the government agencies that looked the other way." The Slayer's helmet tilted toward a particular file cabinet marked Red River, classified. He pulled it open and found something that made even Vega pause in its analysis. Photos of children, hundreds of them, all marked with tracking numbers and injection dates. But these weren't test subjects. These were products. Kids who'd successfully bonded with Compound 5 and been sold to the highest bidder. Private military contractors, foreign governments, criminal organizations. Vought wasn't just making Supes, they were trafficking them. "Fuck me," MM breathed, looking over his shoulder. They're selling kids like weapons. The Slayer's fist clenched, servos in his armor whining with the pressure. Vega updated his target priority list. Red River Institute moved to the top, but Vought Tower remained highlighted, the head of the snake, the source of all corruption. An explosion rocked the facility, dust falling from the ceiling. Butcher's radio crackled. "Butcher, we got incoming! 3 Supes just landed outside. Looks like Vought sent the cleanup crew." "How fast can you move this data?" Butcher demanded. MM checked the progress bar. 2 minutes. "We don't have 2 minutes." Butcher grabbed his rifle and headed for the door. "Kimiko, Frenchie, get those kids to the van and go. We'll hold here and—" The Slayer was already moving, taking the stairs 3 at a time. He emerged into the main floor, where 3 new Supes had entered through the hole he'd blown in the entrance. These weren't B-listers or washed-up has-beens. These were Vaught's response team, the ones they sent when normal methods failed. Gunpowder stood near the entrance, both hands gripping custom-built firearms that would make most militaries jealous. Beside him, a woman called Cindy, a telekinetic they'd pulled from Sage Grove's success stories, floated 3 feet off the ground, debris already orbiting around her like a personal asteroid field. And in the center, Stormfront, who'd apparently survived her previous encounter with the boys and now crackled with barely contained electricity, her Nazi heritage showing in the SS Bolt logo she'd incorporated into her new costume. "There you are," Stormfront said, her voice carrying that distinctive accent. "Vaught's offering 10 million for you, dead or alive, though I'm thinking dead is easier." Lightning arced between her fingers. Nothing personal, just business. The Slayer's response was to load a blood punch, his gauntlet glowing with stored Argent energy from all the kills he'd made tonight. The power built until the air around his fist shimmered like a heat mirage. "Kill him!" Stormfront screamed. Gunpowder opened fire with both weapons simultaneously, the muzzle flash turning the hallway into a strobe light. Cindy sent a wave of telekinetic force that tore doors off their hinges, and Stormfront unleashed a lightning storm that should have fried every circuit in the building. The Slayer launched himself forward through the maelstrom, and Sage Grove learned what it meant when an unstoppable force met immovable objects pretending to be gods. The blood punch hit Gunpowder like a freight train wrapped in hellfire. The Slayer's fist connected with his chest, and the stored Argent energy detonated, creating a shockwave that sent the gunslinger flying backward through 3 walls and into what used to be a medical supply closet. His custom firearms clattered to the floor, barrels bent, useless. Gunpowder himself didn't get up, couldn't get up, because his ribcage had been turned into a jigsaw puzzle and his lungs were painting the walls red. 1 down. Cindy screamed, and the scream had weight. Telekinetic force slammed into the Slayer from all directions, trying to crush him like a soda can. Filing cabinets flew through the air, desks tumbled end over end, and chunks of concrete tore free from the walls. The Slayer's boots scraped against the floor as he was pushed back 6 inches, his armor's servos whining under the strain. Then he activated the flame belch. The shoulder-mounted launcher spat out a gout of superheated flame that engulfed Cindy's telekinetic barrier. Fire couldn't be stopped by thought alone. It moved with its own will, found its own paths. The flames licked around her defenses and caught her costume, her hair, her skin. She broke concentration to bat at the fire, and in that half-second of distraction, the Slayer's ballista shot punched through her skull and painted the ceiling with brain matter. 2 down. Stormfront floated higher, electricity arcing between her fingertips, and for the first time since arriving, the Slayer saw something in a Supe's eyes that looked like genuine fear mixed with exhilaration. She'd spent decades as Vaught's secret weapon, killing whoever they pointed her at. immune to consequences, untouchable. Now she faced something that didn't care about her powers, her history, or her corporate backing. "You know what you are?" she hissed, lightning building into a storm around her body. "You're just another immigrant trying to take what's ours. Well, this is my country, and we don't kneel to—" The Slayer's meat hook fired, a shoulder-mounted grappling system that shot out on a chain and embedded itself in Stormfront's chest. Her Nazi monologue cut off in a wet gasp as he activated the retraction, yanking her out of the air and toward him at terminal velocity. She tried to electrocute him during the flight, tried to fry him the way she'd fried so many others, but Argent shielding didn't care about Earth physics or Compound V. She crashed into his waiting fist, not a blood punch this time, just raw strength, and the impact shattered her jaw, pulped her nose, and sent teeth skittering across the floor like dice. He slammed her down, one boot on her chest, and looked into her eyes as the electricity fizzled out and the fear became absolute. "Bitte," she whispered in German, old habits surfacing as death approached. "Bitte, ich—" The super shotgun ended the conversation. 3 down. The facility was burning now, flames from the Slayer's earlier attacks spreading through the rooms full of paper files and chemical storage. Smoke filled the hallways, alarms screaming their futile warnings. In the distance, sirens, police, fire department, maybe even National Guard. Someone had finally noticed the small war happening in the Catskills. The Slayer found Butcher and MM in the records room, drives full of data, ready to evacuate. Butcher looked at the Slayer, then at the carnage visible through the doorway, and whistled low. "Stormfront." "Fuck me, you killed Stormfront." He started laughing, a sound that held too much pain and triumph mixed together. "Do you know how long I've wanted that bitch dead? How many people she's murdered? And you just—" He gestured at the body, still crackling with residual electricity. "Fucking wrecked her." MM wasn't laughing. He was staring at the files on his screen, specifically at one marked Project Prophet, Vought Tower, Sub-Basement 7. His face had gone pale. "Butcher, you need to see this. Later. We need to— Now, Butcher!" MM's voice cracked. "This file. Jesus Christ, they're not just making Compound V, they're making something else. Something they're calling Temp V, Temporary Enhancement. 24-hour duration, designed for military application. But the side effects—" He pulled up photos that made even Butcher's face harden. "It's killing people. 3 doses and your brain starts hemorrhaging. 5 doses and you're dead, no exceptions. And they're already in production." The Slayer's HUD zoomed in on the screen, Vega analyzing the chemical formulas. Compound designation, Temp V. Estimated casualties if deployed at scale. Catastrophic. Recommend immediate neutralization of production facility. Butcher was already moving, grabbing the drives. "Right. Change of plans. Huey's got the van with the kids. They're heading to a safe house in Vermont. We're going to Vought Tower, and we're burning down every lab between here and there." "Butcher," MM said carefully. "Vought Tower isn't Sage Grove. It's got 30 Supes. Military-grade defenses, and Homelander's going to be waiting. We go in there, we're not coming out. Then we don't come out." Butcher turned to the Slayer. "You want the source of corruption? The beating heart of this whole rotten system? It's not out here in the satellite facilities. It's in that fucking tower, on Stan Edgar's desk, in the labs where they turn children into weapons. You want to end this? That's where we end it." The Slayer's gauntlet brought up a holographic display of Manhattan, Vought Tower highlighted in arterial red. Vega's tactical analysis scrolled past. Facility defenses, extreme. Estimated Supey presence, 30-40. Civilian personnel, 2,000 plus. Success probability, 23%. Recommendation, strategic withdrawal, and the Slayer dismissed the analysis. Success probability didn't matter. Hell had given him worse odds. His helmet turned toward the burning facility, then back to Butcher. A single nod. Not agreement. Not alliance. Just acknowledgement that their paths led to the same place. The tower. The source. The corruption's beating heart. Outside, Kimiko appeared with Frenchie, both of them covered in soot and blood. "The children are safe," Frenchie reported. "But more Supes are coming. Vought is mobilizing everything. They know what you are now, what you can do. They will send an army." "Let them," Butcher said, loading a fresh magazine. "We've got our own army of one." The Slayer checked his ammunition. 67% on standard rounds. BFG 9000 at full charge. Crucible blade ready. Armor integrity at 94%. He'd fought his way through hell with less. But Vega pinged a warning. A new compound V signature approaching fast. Stronger than anything they'd encountered so far. Not Homelander. Something else. The roof exploded inward, and Soldier Boy dropped into the facility like a meteor, wearing stars and stripes. He'd been kept in cold storage, Vought's nuclear option for when situations went beyond control. They'd thawed him out, pointed him at the target, and promised him anything he wanted if he brought back the armored killer. "Heard you've been breaking my toys," Soldier Boy said, cracking his knuckles. His chest was already glowing, building toward a nuclear blast that would vaporize everything in a 100-yard radius. "How about you break against me instead?" The Slayer's only response was to chamber around in his super shotgun and walk forward. Soldier Boy's grin widened. "Yeah, that's what I thought." Soldier Boy's nuclear core was a gift from the Russians, a side effect of the torture and experimentation they'd subjected him to in the 80s. Vought scientists had spent months stabilizing it after he'd escaped, turning him from a walking disaster into a walking weapon. When his chest glowed that sickly green, everything within 100 yards died. Buildings crumbled, steel melted. People simply ceased to exist, their molecular bonds torn apart by radiation that made Chernobyl look like a sun lamp. The Slayer had exactly 4 seconds before detonation. He dove behind a support column as Soldier Boy's chest erupted. The nuclear blast turning the facility's west wing into physics gone wrong. The shockwave hit like God's fist, concrete and steel vaporizing, the very air burning away. The Slayer's armor absorbed most of it. Argent shielding designed to survive Hell's core held against earthly radiation. But the HUD flickered, warning lights painting his vision red. When the blast cleared, half of Sage Grove was gone. Just gone. A crater where laboratories used to stand, the edges glowing orange with residual heat. Soldier Boy stood at the epicenter, smoke rising from his costume, grinning like a shark that had just tasted blood. "That's my opener," he called out. "Want to see my encore?" The Slayer stepped from behind the ruined column, armor scorched, but intact, and Soldier Boy's grin faltered. "The fuck are you made of?" The answer came in the form of a rocket that screamed across the gap and detonated against Soldier Boy's chest. The explosion sent him stumbling backward 3 steps. 3 steps of giving ground that Soldier Boy hadn't given since 1944. His eyes narrowed, the showboating persona dropping away to reveal the soldier underneath. This wasn't going to be easy. Good. Easy was boring. They met in the middle with the sound of a car crash. Soldier Boy's punch would have cratered a tank. The Slayer caught it with one hand, servos whining, and drove his other fist into Soldier Boy's ribs hard enough to crack them. Soldier Boy's knee came up, caught the Slayer in the stomach, and for the first time since arriving in this universe, the Slayer felt pain. Not much, His physiology had been enhanced by the Seraphim, rebuilt to kill gods, but enough to be reminded he wasn't invincible. Soldier Boy capitalized, grabbing the Slayer's helmet and slamming him face first into the ground. Once, twice, 3 times, each impact creating a deeper crater. Tough son of a bitch, I'll give you that. But I've been doing this since before your grandparents were born. The Slayer's hand found the chainsaw, activated it, and buried it in Soldier Boy's thigh. The blade bit through enhanced muscle and ground against bone, spraying blood that burned with residual radiation. Soldier Boy screamed, not in pain, but fury, and tore the chainsaw free, ripping out chunks of his own leg in the process. The wound was already healing, Compound V knitting flesh back together, but not fast enough. The Slayer pressed the advantage, switching to the plasma rifle and unloading at point-blank range. Blue bolts of superheated plasma carved blackened holes in Soldier Boy's chest, each shot burning deeper than the last. The old soldier grabbed a piece of rebar from the rubble and swung it like a club, the metal bar hitting the Slayer's helmet with enough force to dent the ancient armor. "Butcher!" MM shouted from the records room. "We need to go now. That blast probably registered on every seismograph in the state." But Butcher was watching the fight with the fascination of someone seeing their wildest revenge fantasy made real. Not yet. Not fucking yet. Soldier Boy's chest was glowing again, building toward another blast. The Slayer's HUD calculated the yield, bigger this time, enough to level what remained of the facility and probably take out the boys in the process. Unacceptable. He activated the equipment launcher, firing a frost grenade that exploded against Soldier Boy's chest and flash froze the nuclear reaction mid-buildup. Soldier Boy looked down at the ice coating his torso, then back at the Slayer. That was clever. That was actually... The super shotgun blast took him in the face, point blank, and sent him flying backward into the burning ruins. The Slayer advanced, reloading as he walked, and found Soldier Boy pulling himself up with one hand, the other holding his shattered jaw together while it healed. "I'm going to enjoy this," Soldier Boy slurred through broken teeth. "Been a long time since I fought someone worth a damn." They clashed again, and this time there was no strategy, no tactics, just 2 killers trying to destroy each other with pure violence. Soldier Boy's fists broke armor plates. The Slayer's weapons tore through flesh. Blood mixed with motor oil, radiation with argent energy. The ground beneath them cracked from the impacts. Kimiko tried to help, leaping at Soldier Boy from behind, but he caught her mid-air and threw her through a wall hard enough to knock her unconscious. Frenchie opened fire with an assault rifle, bullets bouncing off Soldier Boy's skin like rain. MM was screaming for Butcher to do something, anything, but there was nothing to do except watch. The Slayer grabbed Soldier Boy by the throat and activated the flame belch, bathing him in superheated fire. Soldier Boy returned the favor by headbutting the Slayer hard enough to crack his visor, the first real damage the helmet had taken. They broke apart, both breathing hard, both bleeding, both calculating whether the next move would be their last. "You're good," Soldier Boy admitted, wiping blood from his mouth. "Maybe the best I've fought. But you got one problem. I don't run out of stamina, and I don't run out of compound Vi. How long can you keep this up?" Vega provided the answer on the HUD. Ammunition, 43%. Armor integrity, 79%. Argent energy, 62%. Estimated time until combat ineffectiveness, 47 minutes. Long enough. The Slayer's hand went to his belt and pulled out something he'd been saving. The BFG 9000 slug, a physical round of compressed argent energy that could be fired from standard weapons if you were desperate enough. He loaded it into the super shotgun, and Soldier Boy's eyes widened as he recognized a killing blow being prepared. "Oh, you motherfuck!" The shot turned Soldier Boy's chest into a crater of its own, the argent energy not just destroying tissue, but erasing it from existence. Soldier Boy looked down at the hole where his heart used to be, looked back up at the Slayer, and managed one word. Fuck. Then he fell. The Slayer stood over him, chest heaving, armor smoking. Vega ran a scan. Target terminated. Compound V signature fading. Threat neutralized. Butcher approached slowly, looking at Soldier Boy's corpse with something between satisfaction and disbelief. Soldier Boy, Christ, they'll write songs about this. He glanced at the Slayer. How much ammo you got left? The HUD's answer was blunt, 43% and dropping. Enough, Butcher decided, answering his own question. We hit Vought Tower tonight, before they can mobilize more assets, before Homelander regroups. We end this now, or we don't end it at all. In the distance, helicopters approached. News crews, military, Vought cleanup. The Battle of Sage Grove was about to become international news, and the Slayer's existence was about to become public knowledge. Every Supes boy in North America would know he was coming. Good. Let them know. Let them fear. Let them understand that their corruption had consequences, and those consequences wore green armor and didn't negotiate. The Slayer checked his weapons one final time, then started walking south, toward Manhattan, toward Vought Tower, toward Homelander. The hunt was almost over. The BFG 9000's discharge lit up sub-level 7 like a miniature sun being born. The Argent energy sphere screamed across the gap, and Homelander had exactly 1/10 of a second to realize he'd miscalculated badly. He tried to dodge. His super speed should have been enough, but the BFG's payload didn't care about physics. The sphere passed within 6 feet of him, and that was close enough. Tendrils of green energy lanced out, each one finding flesh, boring through invulnerable skin like it was wet paper. Homelander's scream was primal, animal, the sound of something that had never known real pain suddenly drowning in it. The energy didn't just burn, it unmade, tearing apart the molecular bonds that Compound 5 had strengthened. Chunks of his costume disintegrated, his skin blistered and peeled. His left arm from elbow to wrist simply ceased to exist, reduced to constituent atoms. He crashed to the ground 20 feet away, smoking, bleeding actual red blood that pooled on the concrete. For 3 heartbeats, he didn't move. The remaining Supes froze, their brains struggling to process the impossible. Homelander was down. Homelander was hurt. Homelander was vulnerable. Then he stood up. The regeneration was visible. Compound V working overtime to knit tissue back together. His arm was already regrowing, slower than normal healing, the Argent energy fighting the process, but regrowing nonetheless. His eyes had gone completely red. No blue left, just pure rage, and something that might have been fear if Homelander was capable of recognizing it in himself. "I'm going to pull your spine out through your throat," Homelander whispered. And then he moved. The Slayer had fought fast before. Hell Knights could cross a room in a blink, but Homelander's speed was different. Driven by Compound 5 and absolute fury, he closed the distance before the Slayer could bring another weapon to bear. His remaining fist connected with the Slayer's chest plate, and the impact sent him flying backward through 3 support columns, each one cracking like thunder. The Slayer rolled to his feet, HUD screaming warnings. Armor integrity, 61%. Spinal shock detected. Recommend immediate extraction. He dismissed the warnings and charged back into the fight. They met in the center of the ruined laboratory, and what followed wasn't a fight. It was mutual annihilation attempted through sheer violence. Homelander's heat vision carved molten lines across the Slayer's armor. The Slayer's ballista punched fist-sized holes through Homelander's torso. They grappled, and the floor beneath them cracked from the pressure. Homelander tried to fly up and slam the Slayer down, The Slayer activated his meat hook and used Homelander's own momentum to swing him into a support beam hard enough to bend steel. "Butcher," Frenchie screamed. "The charges are set, but we must go now. The building's structural integrity." "Not yet!" Butcher was firing his rifle at any Supes stupid enough to try joining the fight, but his eyes never left the two titans trying to kill each other. This was everything he'd ever wanted. Homelander getting the beating he deserved. And he'd die before missing the ending. Homelander grabbed the Slayer's helmet with both hands, his left arm fully regenerated now, and squeezed. The ancient armor, which had survived Hell's Heart and countless demon lords, began to crack. Warning lights painted the Slayer's vision red as pressure built against his skull. The Slayer's response was to activate his shoulder-mounted flame belch at point-blank range, bathing Homelander's face in superheated fire. Homelander screamed and released him, stumbling backward, his perfect features now a mass of blistered, blackened skin. His healing factor kicked in immediately, but the pain, the actual, genuine pain, was something his mind couldn't fully process. "I'm a hero," Homelander shrieked, and the words came out garbled through his healing vocal cords. "I'm the hero, and you're just some thing in armor. I saved people. I'm the good guy." The Slayer's only response was to load his last BFG charge. Homelander saw it, and his eyes went wide. "No, no! Not again! Not again!" He launched himself forward with everything he had. Heat vision firing, fists swinging, fighting with the desperation of someone who just discovered mortality. The Slayer met him head-on, and they collided with enough force to shake the building's foundations. The BFG clattered away, unfired. The Slayer's visor finally cracked completely, showing fragments of the face beneath, scarred, ancient, absolutely remorseless. Homelander saw those eyes and flinched. That flinch cost him. The Slayer's fist caught him in the solar plexus with a blood punch, the stored Argent energy detonating inside Homelander's body. He folded around the impact, blood exploding from his mouth, and the Slayer grabbed him by the throat, lifted him up, and slammed him down so hard the concrete crater they created was 6 feet deep. "I can't die," Homelander gasped, blood bubbling from his lips. "I'm Homelander. I'm—" The Slayer's hand tightened, cutting off the words. He could end it now. One more punch, or retrieve the BFG, or simply squeeze until Homelander's neck snapped. His HUD highlighted the kill option, calculating the satisfaction quotient. But Vega pinged a warning. Civilian signatures detected. 247 non-combatants in building. Structural failure imminent. Detonation will cause collapse. The Slayer looked up at the cracked ceiling, the damaged support columns, the spreading fires. Frenchie's charges were set to destroy the labs, but the building was already compromised from the fight. If those charges went off now, Vought Tower would come down, and 247 people who'd done nothing but show up for work would die. Unacceptable. His grip on Homelander loosened, not because of mercy, never mercy, but because the mission parameters had changed. The corruption could be burned out without burying innocents under 82 stories of steel and glass. Homelander sensed the hesitation, and his eyes lit up with desperate hope. "See? You do care about them. You're not some mindless killer. We can work this out. We can—" The Slayer's fist shut him up, breaking his jaw in 3 places. Then he stood, grabbed the unconscious Homelander by the cape, and started dragging him toward the exit. "What the fuck are you doing?" Butcher demanded, following. "Finish him! Finish him!" But the Slayer was already moving, Vega calculating evacuation routes. The charges would still blow, the labs would still burn, but not until the civilians were clear. He'd killed thousands in hell without blinking, would kill thousands more before his crusade ended, but those had been demons, corrupted, willing participants in evil. The people upstairs were just trying to survive in a system that chewed up everyone it touched. They reached the garage level, and the Slayer threw Homelander's unconscious body into the van. Butcher stared at him, incomprehension warring with rage. "You had him! Right fucking there! And you let him!" Kimiko signed rapidly, and Frenchie translated. "She says he's thinking tactically. If Homelander dies under the tower, it's a tragedy. If he survives, broken and beaten, it's proof that Supes can be stopped. That they're not gods. Fuck your tactics." Butcher grabbed his rifle, aiming at Homelander's head. "I'm ending this right." The Slayer's hand caught the barrel, twisted it away effortlessly. Their eyes met. Butcher's filled with decades of rage and grief. The Slayer's cold and calculating behind the cracked visor. A silent conversation happened in that moment, and Butcher saw something in those ancient eyes that made him lower the weapon. "You better know what you're doing," Butcher said quietly. The Slayer released the rifle and turned back toward the tower. His remote detonator came out, and he pressed the trigger. Deep in sub-level 7, Frenchie's charges detonated in a precise sequence, destroying the laboratory equipment, the synthesis stations, the storage tanks. The explosion was contained. No collapse, no civilian casualties. But every piece of equipment necessary to produce Compound V turned into molten slag. The tower stood. The labs burned. And Homelander lay unconscious in the back of a van, his blood pooling on the floor, his invincibility shattered. Above them, emergency alarms wailed. Fire crews mobilized. News helicopters circled like vultures. By morning, the world would know that Vought Tower had been attacked, that their labs were destroyed, and that Homelander, unbeatable, invincible Homelander, had been dragged through the street like a broken action figure. The Slayer checked his ammunition. 12% remaining. Armor integrity. 58%. Mission status. Incomplete. There were still other facilities, still more Supes, still corruption spread across the country like cancer. But tonight's work was done. He started walking, leaving the boys with their unconscious prize, heading into the pre-dawn darkness of a city that would never be the same. The sun rose over Manhattan to find Vought Tower smoking like a cigarette stubbed out by God. News helicopters circled the building, cameras capturing the hole in sub-level 7 where laboratories used to exist, the bodies being carried out on stretchers, the emergency crews trying to contain fires that had been burning for 4 hours. CNN ran the footage on loop. Fox News blamed Antifa. MSNBC blamed white supremacy. Nobody blamed the truth, that something had come to their world and decided Supes were a problem that needed solving. In a safe house in Queens, Billy Butcher watched the coverage, while Homelander lay unconscious in the basement, chained with links thick enough to anchor a battleship. MM had protested, said keeping Homelander was suicide, that he'd wake up and kill them all. Butcher's response had been simple. Then we die. But first, the world gets to see him bleed. The footage showed exactly that. Cell phone videos from the tower's parking garage, grainy and shaky but unmistakable. Homelander being dragged through the concrete like a sack of garbage, his costume torn, his face a mass of burns and blood. The clip had 17 million views in 3 hours. Twitter had crashed twice from the traffic. Reddit's servers were on fire with speculation. "They're calling him the Slayer," Huey said, reading his phone. Capital S. Someone leaked footage from Sage Grove, and now there are compilation videos of every Supie he's killed. The Deep, Stormfront, Soldier Boy, Gunpowder. Jesus, the list just keeps going. People are making highlight reels set to death metal. "Good," Butcher said. Let them see. Let them know these cunts can die. On screen, Ashley Barrett was giving a press conference, her hair somehow more frayed than usual, her eye twitching every few seconds. Vought International assures the public that last night's terrorist attack has been contained. The 7 are currently pursuing the perpetrator, and we expect his capture within. She paused as someone handed her a note, read it, and her face went pale. Within the coming days. In the meantime, Vought Tower remains open for business, and our commitment to public safety is unwavering. Bullshit, muttered. Their labs are slag, their product is destroyed, and their biggest asset is chained in our basement. They're done. They ain't done, Butcher corrected. Wounded, yeah. Scrambling, absolutely. But Vaught's got facilities in 12 countries, assets we ain't even found yet, and enough politicians in their pocket to weather this storm. He gestured at Homelander's unconscious form, visible through the basement door. Which is why we're keeping him. Insurance, leverage, and proof. Kimiko signed something, and Frenchie translated. She asks, where is he now? The Slayer? That was the question everyone was asking. The armored figure had disappeared into the city at dawn, and despite every camera in New York, despite satellites and drones, and the entire NYPD searching, there was no trace. It was like he'd simply ceased to exist. But Vega's tracking showed otherwise. The Slayer was moving north, following the coordinates Butcher had provided. Red River Institute in Virginia, 300 miles south, a facility that didn't exist on paper, where Vought sold enhanced children to the highest bidder. His ammunition was at 12%, his armor was cracked and scorched, and his Argent energy reserves were running on fumes. He didn't care. The van he'd commandeered, stolen from a Vought delivery truck 3 blocks from the tower, rolled down I-95 while the driver's unconscious body lay gently on the sidewalk where the Slayer had left him. Vega was monitoring every news channel, every police frequency, cataloging the response. The National Guard had been mobilized. The FBI had opened a domestic terrorism investigation. Interpol had issued a global alert. And in a bunker beneath the Pentagon, generals were having very quiet conversations about what to do when a one-man army decides your corporate overlords need to die. At Godolphin University, Dean Shetty watched the news coverage and quietly began destroying evidence. The school's secret lab, where they'd been refining Compound V specifically for military applications, was emptied in 6 hours. Every file was burned. Every test subject was relocated or eliminated. By the time the Slayer arrived, and she knew he would arrive, there would be nothing to find but empty rooms and plausible deniability. At the Red River Institute, Director Morrison received a different kind of message. Not a warning, an offer. A man in an expensive suit, representing clients who preferred anonymity, proposing a partnership. They would provide security against the coming threat. They would ensure the facility's operations continued uninterrupted. All they wanted in return was access to the merchandise, the successfully enhanced children, for their own purposes. Morrison accepted. By noon, 20 mercenaries with military hardware and questionable ethics had fortified the institute. By evening, they'd installed automated defense systems that could stop a tank battalion. They were ready for one man in armor. They weren't ready for the Slayer. In Washington, President-elect Dakota Bob sat in his transition office, watching the footage of Homelander's beating, and made a decision that would reshape American policy. "Get me Stan Edgar," he told his chief of staff. "Tell him we need to have a conversation about accountability. And get me the Secretary of Defense. If we can't control the Supes, maybe it's time we had something that could." The pieces were moving. The board was reshaping. And at the center of it all, one question dominated every conversation from corporate boardrooms to military command centers. What do you do when the thing killing your monsters becomes the monster everyone fears? The answer, as far as the Slayer was concerned, was simple. You accept that corruption has consequences, and those consequences don't negotiate. His HUD pinged Red River's location, 40 miles ahead. Vega provided tactical analysis. Facility defenses, extreme. Estimated hostile combatants, 30 to 50. Enhanced targets, unknown. Ammunition status, critical. Recommendation, resupply before engagement. The Slayer checked his weapons. Super shotgun, 4 shells. Plasma rifle, enough charge for maybe 20 shots. Ballista, 3 bolts. BFG 9000, depleted. Chainsaw, fuel critical. It wasn't enough for a prolonged assault, barely enough for a quick strike. But hell had taught him that ammunition shortages just meant getting creative. The crucible blade still hummed with argent energy. His fists still worked. And somewhere in that facility were children being sold like weapons, their lives reduced to profit margins and tactical applications. That was all the motivation he needed. The van's engine growled as he pressed harder on the accelerator. Behind him, Vought was mobilizing every asset they had left. Ahead of him, mercenaries were preparing to defend a facility that trafficked in human suffering. And somewhere in the world, other Supes were watching the news and deciding whether to run or fight. The Slayer had an opinion on which option they should choose. The hunt that began in Times Square had carved a bloody path through Vought's infrastructure, leaving Sage Grove in ruins. Homelander broken, and the tower's labs nothing but molten slag. The Slayer had proven what the world needed to see, that Supes weren't gods, just people with chemical enhancements and fragile egos. They could bleed, they could break, they could die. But the corruption ran deeper than one company, one tower, one city. Red River was just the next target on a list that stretched across continents. Godolphin University, Vought's international facilities, the government agencies that had looked the other way, while children were turned into weapons. Every signature of Compound 5 was a mark on his map, every facility a tumor that needed cutting out. The world had responded with fear and fascination, branding him terrorist and hero in equal measure. Vought would adapt, rebuild, and try to weaponize his existence into another profit stream. The government would attempt to control or eliminate him. Other Supes would seek revenge or try to prove they were different from those he'd killed. None of it mattered. The Slayer had crossed dimensions chasing corruption, and he'd found it wearing capes and calling itself heroic. His ammunition was running low, his armor was damaged, and every military force on Earth would soon be hunting him. But he'd fought through worse odds in hell, and hell, at least, had been honest about what it was. The van disappeared into the Virginia countryside, carrying something older than their gods and more relentless than their nightmares. Red River's mercenaries checked their weapons and told themselves they were ready. The children in the facility's cells heard engines approaching and dared to hope. And somewhere in the ruins of Sage Grove, a recording device captured the Slayer's helmet display, glitching one final message before going dark. Mission status, ongoing. Targets remaining, 247. Corruption level, critical. Recommended action, rip and tear until it is done. May the Force be with you. More stories await.